2014青岛世界园艺博览会，欢迎您。
Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Edna.
And I'm Anne-Marie Sim. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
New Territories villagers admit involvement in violent LegCo protests but blame government for not listening to them.
Elsie Leung says government has right to ask PLA for help in emergencies, but no need to overreact.
China's top political advisor promises mainland will be more understanding and respect Taiwan's sentiment. Villagers from the northeastern New Territories have rejected the government's claim that only radical activists and not the people who stand to lose their homes were involved in the violent protests at LegCo on Friday.
The villagers say they were all in it together, accusing the government of provoking them and threatening more radical action if their grievances are not addressed. ATV's Raymond Yeung reports.
2 days after being widely condemned for storming the LegCo building and clashing with police, opponents of the government's redevelopment plan for the northeastern New Territories tried to set the record straight this afternoon. In a joint press conference, 8 concerned groups and representative bodies of the affected villages explained why they resorted to violence on Friday night. Cho Kai Kai from the Fanning North Villages and Residents Group said they escalated their action only after Finance Committee Chairman Ng Sing tried to rush through voting of the government's funding request to start preliminary work. She insisted they were only trying to prevent the passage of the proposal and had eased off immediately after the meeting was adjourned. Fellow member Ao Hei Man, also a local villager, became emotional as she expressed gratitude for the public's continuous support over the past 2 years. They also refuted the government's repeated claims that only radical activists and troublemakers, not the affected villagers, were responsible for the violence. They accepted collective responsibility for the clashes at LegCo, insisting they were all in it together.
There were more than 1,500 people there, and it includes our villagers and includes the Hong Kong citizens. So the action carried out was together by the 1,500 people.
The villagers and their supporters warned of more waves of protests if the government presses on with its proposal to bulldoze their homes and make way for high-rise apartments. Raymond Young, ATV News.
The Development Minister has accused lawmakers who oppose the government's plans to develop the northeastern New Territories of not understanding the basic facts of the project.
Paul Chan repeated the government's claims that radical activists and not the villagers themselves were responsible for the violence.
The development chief acknowledged today that the government has a duty to listen to public opinion. But Paul Chan again refused to back down on plans to build 2 new towns in the northeastern New Territories, insisting that it's vital to Hong Kong's housing supply. He also spoke out against opponents of the project who stormed the LegCo building on Friday night, saying it made him worried about Hong Kong. Chan reiterated the government's stance that those who clashed with the police were radical political activists and not the actual villagers who stand to lose their homes. He claimed that before the Finance Committee meeting on Friday to discuss funding for the development, he had received phone calls from affected farmers who told him they supported it. Without naming anyone, the Development Minister went on to accuse lawmakers who oppose the project of not fully grasping the basic facts. You can't just reject a proposal because you don't agree with the government's stance, Chan said. He noted that when his bureau was planning the redevelopment of the area, it had considered factors including its geographical location and transport links. Whether the land belongs to a developer is not one of the criteria, he stressed. Chan urged lawmakers to look at the bigger picture when considering his request for $340 million in initial funding for the project and approve it as soon as possible. He warned that if the Northeastern New Territories development plan was delayed, there would be a domino effect and other housing projects would be affected. Ultimately, the Hong Kong public will suffer, he stressed.
Leading Beijing loyalist Elsie Leung says the Hong Kong government has the right to ask the PLA to help deal with an emergency in the wake of violent protests at LegCo.
But she urged the public not to overreact to Beijing's controversial white paper on Hong Kong's autonomy, which asserts the central government's right to declare a state of emergency here. Here's Raymond Yang.
When opponents of the government's redevelopment plans for the Northeastern New Territories clashed with police outside the LegCo building on Friday night, they set off alarm bells about Hong Kong becoming ungovernable. The violence was followed by unfounded rumors online that the police at one stage had considered calling in the PLA to restore order, prompting some to raise fears about a crackdown like the one in Tiananmen Square 25 years ago. Responding to such concerns, Basic Law Committee Vice Chairwoman Elsie Leung said today there's no need to overreact. But she also pointed out that the SAR government has the right to ask the PLA garrison to help in case of an emergency. A controversial white paper released by Beijing earlier this week stated the central government's power to declare a state of emergency in Hong Kong, again raising fears of troops being deployed from across the border. But Leung, a former Justice Secretary, pointed out that's already stated in the Basic Law and urged people who overreacted to read the mini-constitution properly first. The white paper alarmed the pro-democracy camp by asserting Beijing's total authority over Hong Kong, prompting critics to complain that the SAR's high degree of autonomy is being undermined. The timing of the white paper has also been met with suspicion, coming ahead of an unofficial referendum next week on choosing an electoral reform model for the 2017 chief executive election. Leung insisted the release of the document was not aimed at scaring people away from the vote, which she dismissed as having no validity and no legal impact on constitutional reform. The organizer of the referendum disagreed.
Maybe it has no legal effect, but the number of people voting in the civil referendum will surely affect the political bargaining in the later stage. And so it is very reasonable to say that the white paper, at least part of its objective, is targeting at the voting rate of the civil referendum.
Tai believes the white paper is further aimed at the Occupy Central movement, a planned blockade of the city's financial district to push for greater democracy. Another prominent Beijing loyalist and Basic Law Committee member, Maria Tam, brushed aside such speculation.
As far as the white paper is concerned, it's in 7 languages, and it's not aimed at anybody who wants to occupy Central. It only tells you the history of how one country, two systems is being formulated and how it's been implemented in the last 17 years. Nothing new. As far as I'm concerned, there need not be any worry.
Raymond Yang, ATV News.
A new politically independent group studying constitutional reform says society is still divided on the issue.
But a study it conducted found the majority of people believe it won't be against the Basic Law to name chief executive candidates without going through the official nominating committee. ATV's Arthur Kyola reports.
The first stage of the government's public consultation on political reform ended with some 130,000 submissions being received. But a new concern group studying political reform says public opinion is still divided. The group, whose members come from different backgrounds, including business and media, plans to objectively reflect public opinion on political reform. It commissioned a phone survey by Lingnan University last month with more than 1,000 respondents. More than half believe it would not violate the Basic Law if candidates for the 2017 chief executive election were nominated through channels other than the official nominating committee. However, there was no clear majority opinion on how candidates running for the city's top job should be nominated. The majority of respondents did make it clear they believe the city's leader should be elected by a one-man, one-vote system. One of the group's members, Centerline Property founder Shi Wing Ching, said when the administration does come up with a way forward, there are several steps to get it passed through the legislature. Because of this, it can easily be voted down, so he hopes the administration will listen to all views on the matter. The group plans to submit the results of its study to the government. While it counts former Democratic Party lawmaker Fred Lee among its ranks, the group is insisting it has no political affiliation and does not receive funding from any third party. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
China's top political advisor has promised the mainland will be more understanding and respect Taiwan's self-identity in the wake of anti-Beijing protests.
But he's insisting that both sides have to oppose Taiwanese independence for relations to improve. At a forum on cross-strait relations in Xiamen today, China's top political advisor reached out to Taiwan. Yu Jingshen, who's a member of the all-powerful Politburo Standing Committee, said problems should be resolved by the mainland, giving more understanding, respect and consideration from the perspective of a family to Taiwan. We understand the mentality Taiwan compatriots have developed under special historical conditions, he said. We respect their identification with the current social system, values and lifestyle, and we know that some friends still harbor misgivings on the development of cross-strait relations. The development of cross-strait relations is like sailing on the sea. You're never going to have favorable winds throughout the voyage. But he held firm against Taiwanese independence, declaring that as long as both sides consolidate opposition to independence and uphold the One China policy, relations are bound to improve. At the same time, he encouraged Taiwanese youth to realize their potential in cross-strait cooperation. In March, hundreds of students protesting against a trade deal with the mainland occupied Taipei's parliament for 24 days. They raised fears that the deal would give Beijing too much economic influence over the island and open the floodgates to mainland university students who would take their jobs. It was the island's biggest anti-Beijing movement in years and caused alarm on the mainland. At the forum today, the Deputy Secretary General of Taiwan's ruling Kuomintang Party, Hong Xiu-ju, criticized the student protesters. Hong questioned why the younger generation could not embrace the sincerity shown by both sides. The head of the mainland's Taiwan Affairs Office, Zhang Jizhuan, said Beijing will allow more Chinese citizens to travel to the island. Still to come on ATV's main news tonight. Japan deploys missiles to boost its defense capabilities near Diaoyu Islands.
And England's World Cup campaign off to a losing start against Italy.
ATV Asia channel makes this summer even hotter. The latest information. Enlightening documentaries. Keeping pace with time. Embrace the coming amazing summer. They can drive you nuts. From the most powerful roaring on Earth to the sexiest bodies you'll ever see. They're surely every man's dream. Drive it every Monday night at 8. The brilliant beaked whales make a world of sounds.
And they're now very deep, they're 1,000 meters deep. So it's the equivalent of trying to listen to somebody shouting in the bottom of a well or a pit.
Follow the incredibly amazing sounds. Scientists find the communication secret of the biggest mammal on Earth. Science on the 7 Seas. Tomorrow night at 8:30.
司機有落啊，唔該。
天時暑熱，唔好喺戶外玩咁耐啦噃。
知道。
咁熱，玩一陣就要飲水補充翻啦。大熱天時喺戶外做嘢，最好着淺色同埋通爽嘅衫，再加埋頂闊邊帽，好似我咁，仲要時不時去陰涼嘅地方唞唞啊！如果唔舒服， 就快啲睇醫生啦。
Hot topics of our time. Key issues of the day. From different perspectives of comprehensive views. The forum. The news. The discussion. Check in current news. Newsline. Tonight at 8. Want to promote your latest products on television? ATV's 2014 Ad Easy package is the right choice for you. Our promotion reaches as far as the Pearl River Delta region and southern China, and our price starts at just $68,000. Call 2992-8890 or our mainland hotline now.
Japan's military has deployed missile launchers to boost its defence capabilities near the disputed Diaoyu Islands.
The location is close to a common route used by the Chinese Navy and could affect its military operations. Here's Arthur Okeola.
Japanese media reported today that a batch of Type 88 surface-to-ship missile launch vehicles had arrived in the Miyako harbor on the 6th of June. The Type 88s are a major part of the Japanese military's ground defense arsenal. Two of the vehicles were earlier mobilized during military exercises on the island in southern Okinawa last November. It was the first time missile systems were deployed there, and the military said the drill was designed for defending islands. Miyako Island is 170 kilometers from the disputed Diaoyu Islands in the East China Sea, claimed by both Beijing and Tokyo. The nearby Miyako Strait is also a major route for the Chinese Navy to access the Western Pacific, so the deployment not only boosts Japan's defense capabilities, but steps up its monitoring of Chinese operations. Japan's military is considering deploying missiles in the southwestern islands of Kagoshima and Ishigaki as well. Its ground self-defense force plans to begin deploying 16 of its more advanced Type 12 surface-to-ship missiles in the southwestern prefecture of Kumamoto in 2 years' time. Each launch vehicle can carry 6 missiles with a range of 200 kilometers, enough to cover the waters around the Diaoyu Islands. They're particularly effective as they can fire at low altitudes to avoid radar detection while rarely missing their targets. This deployment follows flaring tensions between China and Japan in recent months. The two sides have accused each other of flying fighter jets abnormally close to their own warplanes and acting dangerously during 2 recent encounters over the East China Sea. Arthur Ricchiola, ATV News.
Israel has arrested 80 Palestinians as it hunts for 3 Israeli teenagers who went missing in the West Bank.
But first now look at other international news. Iraq's military says it's been able to stop rebel forces from advancing with the help of Shiite militias.
Iraq's security forces were able to halt the advance of Sunni Islamist militants north of Baghdad yesterday, as thousands of Iraqi Shiites stood in line to join up with militias of their own. The Iraqi military's commander-in-chief, Major General Qasim al-Musawi, said it was clawing back some territory with the help of Shiite militia. Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's battle to regain control of his own country has been aided by the large numbers of Shiites who have responded to his and a prominent cleric's call to arms against the al-Qaeda splinter group known as the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, in what is quickly becoming a sectarian civil war. Dozens of volunteers climbed into the back of army trucks, chanting Shiite slogans and brandishing assault rifles. But ISIS militants appeared to be holding on to 2 key cities captured from Iraqi forces earlier this week. As Iraqi officials spoke of wresting back the initiative against Sunni militants, neighbouring Shiite Iran held out the prospect of working with its longtime archenemy, the US, to help restore security in Iraq. The US deployed an aircraft carrier into the Gulf in response to the escalating violence, readying it in case Washington decides to pursue a military option after insurgents overran areas in the north and advanced on Baghdad. Israeli forces have arrested scores of Palestinians in the West Bank, including members of the militant group Hamas, which runs the occupied territory. They went from house to house looking for 3 Israeli teenagers believed to have been kidnapped by Palestinian militants while hitchhiking home. It was the biggest arrest operation in years and came after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered security forces to use all tools at their disposal to find the 3 teenagers. He blamed Hamas and warned of serious consequences. Netanyahu's government is also holding the Palestinian Authority responsible because of its power-sharing deal with Hamas.
The kidnapping of 3 teenage kids is a direct result of the daily incitement of the Palestinian Authority, which encourages abductions and murders of Israelis. Israel holds the Palestinian Authority directly responsible for the safety of our children.
But the Palestinian self-rule government, which administers 38% of the West Bank, rejected blame, saying the teens went missing in territory under full Israeli control. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko has vowed to strike back against pro-Russian separatists who shot down a military transport plane, killing all 49 people aboard and dashing hopes of the conflict ending anytime soon. Poroshenko said he had called another meeting of his security chiefs for tomorrow, and Ukrainian armed forces had already intensified their operation, intended to prevent the country from breaking up. The newly installed leader announced a national day of mourning after the plane was shot from the sky as it was landing at the airport in Luhansk, an eastern city where separatists have taken over government buildings and declared an independent state. Russia, meanwhile, has strongly condemned a protest outside its embassy in Ukraine, which saw windows smashed, the Russian flag torn down and cars overturned. Moscow accused Ukrainian police of doing nothing to stop the attack and called it a grave violation of Ukraine's international obligations.
Time now for sports with Bo Lang.
And a big disappointment for England fans like us, Bo.
That's right, but the match lived up to the hype. England are off to a losing start at the World Cup. Italy beat them 2-1 in the searing heat and humidity of the Brazilian summer. While Italian fans celebrated, England fans were left shattered after their team lost 2-1 in their Group D World Cup clash with Italy in Arena Amazonia in Manus. Claudio Marchisio opened the scoring for the Italians after 35 minutes. England equalised just 2 minutes later when Daniel Sturridge found the back of the net. But Italy restored the lead just after the break when former Manchester City striker Mario Balotelli headed home at the back post. England fans admitted Italy were the better side, although they're not giving up on their team yet.
Second half, we just blew ourselves out with the heat and everything else. You know, other than that, they weren't good enough, England. Weren't good enough today.
I still have confidence. Uruguay didn't play very well against Costa Rica earlier, so I'm still hopeful that we can go through.
So it's a shame we didn't get a result today, but I think we're going to do okay in the end, we'll get a good result.
England will next play Uruguay on Thursday. The South Americans suffered a 3-1 defeat against Costa Rica. Uruguay started off strong when Edinson Cavani's penalty put them in the lead. But after the break, Costa Rica made a remarkable turnaround and scored twice in 3 minutes through Joel Campbell and Oscar Durate. Marcos Urena wrapped up the victory for Costa Rica in the 84th minute. The misery continued for Uruguay when Maxi Pereira was shown a straight red card for a bad tackle. In Group C, Ivory Coast got their World Cup campaign off to a winning start by beating Japan. Keisuke Honda's strike put Japan ahead. But goals from Wilfried Bony and Gervinho sealed the 2-1 win for the Ivorians. Also in Group C, Colombia made an impressive start in the competition by thrashing Greece 3-0. The South Americans went ahead early through Pablo Amero. Teofilo Gutierrez doubled their lead just before the hour mark, and James Rodriguez netted in the third in stoppage time. And favourites Argentina are preparing for their match against debutants Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Argentines are two-time winners of football's biggest tournament, although their last success was back in 1986. But there's hope that 2014 will be their year, with the likes of Lionel Messi, Sergio Aguero, Pablo Zabaleta and Angel Di Maria among the team. In golf, Martin Kaymer will take a 5-shot lead into the final round of the US Open. After 2 days of near-flawless golf, Germany's Martin Kaymer had a tricky third round at Pinehurst Resort, North Carolina. The 29-year-old, who is seeking his second major title, made 5 bogeys and missed a good birdie chance at the third. But he managed to sink an eagle on the 5th to go back to 10 under. Kaymer held his nerve to take a 5-shot lead into the final round after carding a 72 to finish 8 under 202.
Yeah, a little bit of an up and down start. Couple early bogeys, and then the eagle that brought me back to level par and then putted off the green. So a lot of things were happening today, but I think I kept it very well together, even though I didn't hit as many great shots as yesterday and Thursday. But overall, it's a decent round.
Americans Ricky Fowler and Eric Compton share second place with 3 under 207. Compton, who has had 2 heart transplants, surged into contention after reeling off 5 birdies and an eagle. Henrik Stenson of Sweden is a shot further back with a 2 under 208. And defending champion Justin Rose inched his way back up the leaderboard with 1 over 211. A look at the weather before we go. It was mainly cloudy with a few showers today. Temperatures range from 25.3 to 30.8 degrees, while the relative humidity was between 64 and 94%. Winds were moderate north to northwesterly. Let's check on the ultraviolet reading. The maximum recorded for the day was 10. Tomorrow's UV index will be about 10 as well. Now for a look at the weather in the region. Tropical storm Hagibis was centered about 190 kilometers southwest of Xiamen. It is forecast to move north at about 10 kilometers per hour and weaken as it heads inland. And now the satellite images. Cloud bands associated with the tropical storm are covering the southeastern part of China and the northeastern part of the South China Sea. Here's what we can expect over the next few days. Mainly cloudy with a few showers tomorrow. There will be some sunny intervals. Temperatures will range from 27 to 31 degrees. Sunny intervals and a few showers in the following couple of days. Here are the latest pollution readings under the Air Quality Health Index. General stations are at 3 to 9, meaning the health risk is low to very high. Roadside levels are at 6 to 8, and the health risk is moderate to very high. Finally, here's the weather around the world.
That's our main news for Sunday night. We'll have an update in 1 hour. I'm Edna.
I'm Bolo.
And I'm Anne-Marie Sim. Thanks for watching ATV. We'll leave you now with the Big Love Alliance promoting the rights of sexual minorities. Good night.
Good night.
Coming up, check in current news. Newsline.